Welcome to the Cannabis Equipment News Podcast. Hi, I'm David Manti, and welcome to a new episode of the Cannabis Equipment News Podcast. With me this week is Daniel Blackburn, Senior Chemist with Entex. How you doing today, Daniel?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you very much for joining me.
Of course. Glad to be here.
Before we get started, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You can also help us out a lot by leaving the podcast a positive review on whatever platform you use. Finally, if you want to email the podcast, you can reach me at david@cannabisequipmentnews.com. Daniel, I'd like to get started by learning a little bit about the person. How did you get involved with the cannabis industry?
So my background is in the biotech industry. So I worked in Berkeley in the San Francisco Bay Area for almost a decade. We were doing fermentation-derived compounds, and I was a process chemist there for about 8 years. We did a lot of stuff with organic acids, a lot of compounds that come from naturally derived sources. And we ended up getting into the cannabis realm, the cannabinoid realm. So we started doing fermentations based on cannabinoids, and that's kind of what got me interested into it. And then I wanted to get out of the Bay Area, so I came to a small town called Cameron Park, and I found this company called Entex, and it looks like they were doing some really cool stuff. They were building all these really sophisticated processing equipment in a small little town, and it's something that I wanted to be a part of.
What was the change like when you moved into the cannabis industry? Was it any different than, working in fermentation?
There's a lot of similarities, but then there's a lot of differences. So a lot of the customers that we have, well, first of all, in the fermentation industry, we didn't really have customers. The customers were the end users of the compounds. So it was mostly, it was up to us to kind of figure out the process, and there were brand new processes that nobody had done before. So it was up to us to kind of figure out how to purify compounds and make good quality products. In the cannabis industry, there's a lot of players here, and there's a lot of customers that may not have the experience background in chemistry. So that was a major shift, was trying to be able to explain. It's a chemical process, right? So trying to explain and show people, what's good of a specific process in products versus others, and try and help them to kind of figure out the right way to go and just be there along the way.
What do you do as a senior chemist at Entex? What does your day-to-day look like?
So my core role is to basically evaluate our processing equipment. So we have our mostly fabricators and machinists. They're building all the equipment. John, you've talked to him, our CTO. He's the brains behind everything. He designs everything. So it's my role to essentially validate that the process works and make sure that all the sensors and all the feedback from the systems is operating correctly, and the quality of the product that's coming out is good and consistent, and everything's just running smoothly. So we have our in-house analytical capabilities here, and we also validate those with external labs. California is a great place to be able to work closely with some really high-level analytical labs. So that's where my role comes in.
What is that back and forth like in terms of from product development to actually testing the products out? I can't imagine that they are working perfectly out of, right off the line every time.
Well, John's a pretty good engineer, and he's thought these things through. But yeah, there is a lot of back and forth. So when we run through the process, we're just keeping track of everything, monitoring everything, and then we have such a close-knit team here that the feedback is really fast. So if any small thing is going wrong, we have our lead fabricators on site at all times, basically, and they can make adjustments on the fly. So it's a really fast process.
One of the new pieces of equipment that you recently came out with was the new cold water cannabis extraction system. Can you tell me a little bit about that product's development and how long it was in development, the R&D behind it, and sort of what the response has been ever since it went out to the market?
Yeah, so we worked closely with a customer who was really interested in basically scaling up his cold water extraction process. So it's been a really close collaboration with them throughout the design process. That's kind of what got us interested. And, we have a really good ethanol extraction based system here, but we thought we could definitely get into this market with like really high quality engineering and having them give us constant feedback on every step of the process was really, really helpful. And it was a pretty quick process within, I don't know the exact timeline, but roughly 6 months, we were able to get something up and working and running. And we were at the MJ BizCon convention this couple weeks ago, and we got really good feedback from our system. People were super interested.
It seems like the industry is moving towards solventless extraction. What are your thoughts? Do you see that as a trend? Is that going to be a permanent movement towards solventless, or is it a fad?
I think there's always going to be a place for it. I think there's always going to be a place for both streams, right? So our core system, the ethanol extraction, it's super scalable. You can do it on a massive scale, and we have a lot of interest there. And there's also people who just want to do some, small extractions. We have from 20-pound batch up to 10,000 pounds a day. But for the cold water extraction, it's a different kind of product, right? I wouldn't necessarily say cleaner, but it's more closer to the roots of the plant product. And I think there's always going to be a market for that. People like to have, clean. It uses only water, so there's no solvents or trace residuals. It's a simpler process, and I don't think it's a fad. I think it's always going to stick around.
The new machine processes, I believe, 100 to 400 pounds per batch. Is that accurate?
Yeah, so we have, I think, 3 different sizes. The largest one we have so far produces 400 pounds per batch.
And you said this was a customer-driven change, right?
Yes, correct.
What is the back and forth like when you're working off of customer feedback in trying to come up with a new product? What is that interaction like?
I think it's definitely the best way to go about developing a new product, because you're speaking with people who do this on a day-to-day basis, right? We're not in the business of doing extraction to produce an end product to sell onto the market. We're producing manufacturing equipment. So to be able to have that feedback, there's always a check and balance between the actual engineering and the feasibility of some change that may not make sense from an engineering standpoint or even a chemical standpoint. So there is a back and forth, and there's definitely things to be worked out there. But overall, I think that's one of the best approaches to developing new pieces of equipment and new processes, is to have that customer be involved.
When you look at the cannabis industry from an extraction perspective, what are some of the technologies that you've seen that you find the most exciting? I think it's such an interesting industry because you can have people who don't have chemical backgrounds. They can be farmers that are trying to develop a brand for themselves, and they want to take their product and they want to make end product and get that big return on their product. So I think moving towards allowing people who don't have the chemical processing experience to be able to run a process and to be able to generate their own products and get into the market themselves instead of just selling raw material. I think technology around streamlining the processes, making it really robust and really repeatable, making good quality products with minimal, requirements for actually diving deep into the chemistry of things. So one of the big parts that I looked at in my past work was process analytical technology. So that means being able to quantify the compounds in your process in real time, to be able to get real-time feedback, to be able to monitor the process, because it is a complicated process, and having that know-how is pretty important. But when you bring in something like
analytical technology in real time, you can get that real time feedback and you can make adjustments. You don't have to have any knowledge of running an HPLC or sending out your samples and letting a third party lab do it for you and having that turnaround time. It's just too slow. So being able to take control of your process by getting feedback in real time is huge.
Some people look at extraction as difficult or something that they don't have, like you said, the expertise to bring in-house. Is the industry trending towards more plug-and-play systems that could essentially be used by a novice?
I think so. That's kind of how this company was developed, trying to, the people who started this company, they were, trying out extraction for themselves. And they just found that, there really was no single system that was easy to use by, an operator that maybe doesn't have a chemical engineering experience. So I think that's a huge driver for this market. And that's kind of where we try to stand out, is trying to make a plug and play system that's, it just requires one single operator to be able to load up a bag, put it in, take it out, push a button, something like that. So it's definitely the way the market's trending.
What are some of the things that Entex has been working on, that we might see within the next year or so come out onto the market?
So that's one thing that we have in development right now, is that process analytical technology. So we're trying to develop spectroscopic sensors to be able to give that real-time feedback and to essentially control the process itself. So make real-time adjustments because everybody's input material is different. Mm-hmm. And, that can have, you definitely need to make adjustments based on each individual's input material. So having the ability to make those changes by getting feedback from the system itself, that's what we're working on right now.
How often do you have interaction with customers? Is it a pretty constant dialogue when they bring a new system in-house and they're trying to essentially tweak it to their needs?
Definitely. That's what we try and offer as well. So we don't just sell the equipment and that's it. We like to be with the customers throughout the entire startup process and even long term. So we have a few customers that we're still in contact with on a regular basis, trying to dial in the process. Whether that means we have some people on our team fly out there and help them dial it in, or just over the phone, things like that. So we're constantly in contact with our customers.
When it comes to cannabis, sometimes, especially when you're coming from other industries, it seems like it's a little bit behind the times in how business is done. Did you have a moment when you came over to cannabis that kind of like blew your mind in terms of how business was conducted?
I think the rate that business is conducted is extremely different from what I'm used to. Building a large manufacturing process in the tried and true chemical industry is a really slow process. It can take 10 years, a couple of decades. This environment here, you can have a process up and running in a matter of a few months. Mm-hmm. So that was a huge change. It's pretty exciting too.
I was going to say that's got to be pretty exciting for you, because it's not, one change every 10 years. It's happening, 2 a year.
Exactly. And that was definitely the hard part of being in the chemical industry, is just how slow things go. And this is huge. You can see something that you've seen built from just somebody envisioning it to a 3D model to actually something on the floor, and then something that is in a customer's hands and being processed. So really exciting.
Do you have a personal connection at all to the cannabis industry?
I don't really know.
Okay. And oh, go ahead.
Yeah, this is my first experience with the cannabis industry for sure.
Okay. What are your thoughts? Are you in it? A lot of times this industry is one that's rather addictive, where people get into it and then they can't see themselves leaving. Has the same thing hit you?
I think I do see that, because just the excitement in the industry and just how quickly it moves. And, it's a complicated process with a lot of moving parts. Doing plant extractions you have thousands of different compounds that are relatively unknown to us right now. So there's a lot of space for innovation. There's a lot of space for learning and doing new things.
You had mentioned being at MJ Biz. What were some of the things at the show that turned your head?
The size of the industry, thousands and thousands of different manufacturers and producers. Just the scale, seeing it in a space like that, the scale of the industry that you don't really get to see when you're just talking with customers, kind of a little isolated, to be able to come together as a whole industry and see the hype that blew me away.
I was really impressed with the NTEX booth. I thought you guys did a really good job of displaying the equipment. And one thing that I was interested with the cold water cannabis extraction system was how, sometimes you don't understand the scale of something until you see it in person. And it kind of just blew me away a little bit. I thought it was really well designed and just, looked cool.
That heads up to our engineers and our designers. They know how to make things look cool. I've always been interested in chemical processing equipment. I think they look cool to me, but some people just see a bunch of pipes and tubes. And I think, our team really makes them shine, really makes them come out, has a clean look, really refined. And it's awesome to see.
Do you try to keep a pulse on the industry when it comes to legalization on a state or federal level?
Yeah, we definitely are looking at that. We can see, we see in our customer base as well, when legalization starts, companies start to pop up and they're really interested in getting started in extraction. So we're always looking for where a new market is emerging and we can hopefully get in there.
How can you tell the difference, or can you even tell the difference when new markets open up? How do you know the difference between a startup that's kind of a tire kicker versus somebody that, really has some traction?
I think that's more up to the business team. You get a lot of different inquiries out there, and I don't know if I can speak to that too much.
Okay.
When I get brought in, people are really interested in getting started and getting to know the details. Actually, maybe I think that's one thing that kind of makes people stand out is when they have detailed questions and they want to dive into the numbers on how the systems work and what their throughput is and all the nuances. So I think that's one thing that definitely stands out in these customers.
From some of the people that you're speaking with in the industry, what are some of the greatest challenges that remain when it comes to extraction?
Let's see, one of the challenges. I think one of the major challenges has always been on the analytical side. I think that's a huge part of it that still needs to be further refined and developed. Some of my experience is developing analytical methods on HPLCs, and we've had issues with customers, out in these new emerging markets like Alabama, for example. They're relying mostly on third-party analysis, and you go from one lab to the next, and sometimes you can get very erroneous results. So I think that's one thing that definitely needs to be developed. Have a more standardized approach to quantification. And this is stuff that people are consuming, right? So you definitely want to ensure that your product is of high quality and it's not going to harm somebody down the line. So that's one thing where we see a lot of people want to dive into.
How often do you get a chance to go out and visit a customer or a facility at their location?
Whenever we have a new install, I generally go out there and help walk through the process, try and help them out with developing their in-house analytical methods. I'm always trying to push that, being able to do your analysis of your own products in-house. It's so vital to be able to to be able to see the insights and to be able to, refine your process and create better product. So every chance I get to go out, I love to see it. I love to see their facility, how they work. We've gone to different countries. Like we recently went out to Thailand for a couple of weeks to help them, put in a system and help develop their process, help with their analytical methods, things like that.
When you went to Thailand, other than cultural differences, are they running their cannabis operation different than operations here in the U.S.?
Yeah, I think their market is heavily regulated. So a lot of what they produce has to go through the government, and they actually hold their production to really high standards, to really high GMP standards. And it was amazing to see the labs and stuff that they've built. They've spent a lot of time and effort designing these facilities, and it speaks true to what they're producing. They're producing really high quality stuff, and it is a lot slower, I think, than producing here. It takes a lot of time for them to get up and running just because they need that constant feedback from the government. But I think it's a good way to start. And, when regulations come into play across the entire country and across the entire world, they're going to be ready for it.
Okay. A lot of operators like to boast that they hold themselves to a GMP standard in the U.S. Do you see that most of those operators are practicing what they preach?
I think, GMP, it can be a little, I think they try to,
yeah.
But, it is a hard standard to hold up to. And I think, I think there's definitely room for improvement. And I think the industry can definitely, pharmaceuticals is the tried and true standard of GMP, and there's definitely a move towards that, and I think people are getting close to it. But I think there's definitely going to be a lot more necessity. It's an expensive and time consuming standard to hold up to. So I think we'll get there, but maybe not quite all the way there.
What are some of your expectations for the immediate and then sort of distant future when it comes to legalization, on a federal level, and maybe some of the states that might come online next?
Sorry, say that again.
What are your predictions, I guess, when it comes to federal legalization? And do you have any predictions as to what states might come online in the next election cycle?
I really hope that federal legalization comes forward, because I think it's doing so much more harm to have it broken up state by state. I think opening up the borders and just having one kind of regulated, leading head overseeing all these things is going to be really important, because right now it's pretty piecemeal, and that it also hinders our ability as a supplier to, we constantly have to be checking with different regulations at each state and adjusting things in our designs and all that kind of stuff. So having federal legalization would be so huge for the industry. And, it's hard to make predictions on that. I really hope that it will happen this next election cycle, but,
yeah,
time will tell.
Absolutely. Before we get out of here, is there anything else that we might have missed, or anything in particular that you want to talk about with NTEX, things that you guys are working on, things that we could expect from you guys in the near future?
I think the thing that we're seeing right now, where the industry's going, we've done had a lot of positive feedback coming into our company recently, and especially in the South American market. I think what we're trying to develop is a set of equipment that is really modular. I think people are trying to start up these major processing plants and farms, and we're here to help them scale up. So it's a big investment to build out an entire full scale system all at once. So I think we're trying to lean towards taking a more modular approach to a manufacturing system. So I think that's kind of where we're trying to lean, is trying to help people through the process. They may start out small initially, and we can basically build a system to add on capacity as things go along. So I think that's one major thing that we're trying to get into as well.
Is every system essentially customized for each customer?
It is. Yep. So we have all the design in-house, all the fabrication in-house, all the testing in-house. So we can basically, show a customer what we have, and we can make any refinement we need to on the spot. And we can fabricate it in-house, as easily as just a standard system off the shelf.
I think that's a really good point, because when people think of extraction systems, they think, a really big undertaking. What is the smallest system that you've installed into a customer and then maybe scaled afterwards?
So we haven't scaled fully yet, but we've given customers, we've installed, I think it's, what is the numbers there? It's, I think it's on the order of, 300 to 500 pounds per day. And, they're still at that stage right now, but, we can easily, when they need, we can add on different stages, more centrifuges, higher heating and cooling capacities. Those can all be easily added on to a system that's already basically built on site.
Is that something that you draw up in sort of a roadmap for each client? Just, we're going to start here, and you should expect to see these additions within this sort of timeline?
Yeah, depending on how they see their company growing. Yeah, we definitely take part in that.
Okay. Well, Daniel, thank you very much for taking the time today. Is there anything else that you want to make sure the Cannabis Equipment News audience knows about NTEX, or maybe where they could go and get some more information if they're looking for it?
Yeah, you guys can always reach us at ntex.com. We have people that are on call all the time, taking requests and all that stuff. So, we're always here. We're here to get your company up and running, and we'll be there all along the way.
Daniel, thank you very much for the insight today. I believe you're the first senior chemist I've spoken with, so I really appreciate your insight into the industry.
Of course, yeah. Happy to get the information out there.
Before we get out of here, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You could also help us out a lot by leaving the podcast a positive review on whatever platform you use. If you want to email the podcast, you can reach me at david@cannabisequipmentnews.com. All right, for Daniel Blackburn, senior chemist at NTEX, I'm David Manti. This is the Cannabis Equipment News Podcast, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you for listening to the Cannabis Equipment News Podcast.